Hey everyone, welcome to the Texas Signal. I'm Kevin, joined here by Kier, and we've got Texas Democratic Party here with us as always. What's up, Cliff?
Good afternoon, guys. Good to be back with you.
Listen, let's just kick it off with some of these big dogs announcing for the U.S. Senate race. The Democratic side is getting a little crowded, but in the past few days, we've seen Houston City Councilwoman Amanda Edwards get in. And then we saw State Senator Royce West out of Dallas. What y'all's read on the state of the race right now?
Well, it's exciting. I'm thinking back to the last time that we had a robust primary in Texas for a top of the ticket race. And, I'm thinking back to the entirety of my 15-year career, and I can't remember one quite like this. I think we have multiple candidates who are widely seen as highly competitive top tier contenders. And, I think it's energizing. I've read some reports about how it's a lot easier for one candidate to charge forward without having a primary challenge. At the end of the day, it's a critically important race. People are going to file. Having candidates of this caliber run at this level, I think really shows that Texas is about the biggest battleground state in the country. That this is a seat worth fighting for. This is a nomination worth fighting for, and it really shows the strength, the growing strength of our party brand.
I would just add, in case folks are just not tuning into the race, that those two are joining MJ Hagar, who's out of Round Rock, Chris Bell out of Houston, Sima Hernandez out of Houston as well. So that field is growing. There are a few others, but those are the sort of most well-known names so far. Is Cornyn on the defense, you think, Cliff?
I think he has to be. I'm sure he sees the same poll numbers that we do. He sees that his polling is less favorable, more anxiety inducing than Ted Cruz's and Donald Trump's in Texas. It was really interesting. There was a poll that was done by the University of Texas and the Texas Tribune that came out a couple of weeks ago, and it showed that Cornyn's favorables are at around 37%, his unfavorables are 34%. So the vast majority of Texans either don't know who John Cornyn is, and the ones who do don't like it. So what that shows us is that it's one thing to not be polarizing, to try to be a backbencher and sort of go along to get along, and especially as the power structure changes, to go along to get along with the likes of Donald Trump. But it's really not a winning strategy. It's not going to mobilize people. It's not going to get them to really love you. Darren Shaw, the Republican pollster who participated in that poll, said you have some folks who really represent a sort of meteoric kind of rise, like the Beto O'Rourke's, the Donald Trumps, that kind of come out of nowhere, and love them or hate them, they're a force to be reckoned with. And then you have people who just no one really kind of gives a damn about. And if you do, you don't really like them a whole lot. And if you had to pick, it may seem like the safer route is the latter, but it's that's what leaves you with 37% of people saying that they like you and want to support you in re-election after you've been in office for around twice the age of some of our interns.
Well, in Kier, so we've been looking at the money race here, right, on both sides of the aisle. What's your read on where sort of each side is in this beginning part of the cycle?
So let's talk about state money, right? We had reports that came out on July 15th reflecting money raised through the first half of the year. And of course, this is in conjunction with the end of the legislative session that wrapped up about a month before that. And so not a whole lot of time for these folks to raise money. The Republicans collectively had about $18 million raised during the primary, $15 million of that by Governor Greg Abbott, and another chunk by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. And it seems to me what this does is set up the Republican primary party for a repeat of what they did in 2018, which is Governor Abbott had a large pool of money to use. He had an underfunded Democratic opponent for governor, so he was able to use a lot of that war chest to boost turnout programs around the state for Republicans in down ballot races, particularly legislative races. And I think we should see the expectation that that's going to happen again, principally because, as we know, the Republicans are very concerned in particular about losing control of the Texas House. Democrats only need to gain 9 seats to gain control of the House. With redistricting coming up during the next legislative session, it would be a big deal for them to lose control of that body. So while you'll see individual legislators raising a lot on the Republican side, that pool of money the governor's got, you can better believe he's going to use that to boost those fortunes of down ballot candidates.
Insofar, it's still very early, but how are Democrats doing generally?
Okay, I haven't had a chance to go through all the reports yet, but particularly, we've got a dozen House freshmen on the Democratic side who at least a lot of them didn't win by a whole lot, so there may be some vulnerability there. I'd like to see them get stronger fundraising over the next period. We won't see another report from them until the end of the year, but they've got to get it in gear to get ready for serious races. And not to mention, on offense, Democrats have got to get their act together to get candidates fielded and begin to raise funds to go after those 9 seats they need to take past the House. Realistically, you probably got to go after twice as many as that to actually win 9 or 10 of them. And that takes a lot of money.
Hey, and Cliff, on healthcare, right? It's obviously a monster issue in Texas and across the country, particularly all these new candidates getting in different races. The U.S. Senate and the House are really focusing on healthcare. Cornyn, of course, has his own issues there. You guys have been pushing that issue very hard. Obviously, a winning issue for us, right?
It is. It's absolutely a winning issue for us. We look back to 2018. One of the reasons why we have such a strong Democratic House right now, House of Representatives in D.C., is because of the healthcare issue. We do a lot of research. We talk to a lot of voters, and it's clear that it's still something that's top of mind for a lot of voters, especially in districts that we know that we're going to compete in and win. Look at the facts. It's clear that after decades of Republican governance in this state, those folks weren't waiting for Donald Trump to try to disrupt the healthcare system. They've been failing all on their own. We have 4.3 million people in the state who are uninsured, more than any other country. 1 out of every 5 children in the state is uninsured. We're losing billions of dollars every year in federal funds that we just decline to accept. That could be saving lives, and that could be keeping some of our hospitals open. We closed 17 rural hospitals in the state, more than any other state in the country. So if healthcare is urgent in the political conversation anywhere in the country, it's here more than anywhere else in spades.
One of the most recent candidates who got in was Wendy Davis, running for Congress. Ran for governor here in Texas a few years ago. Now she's making a gambit in the U.S. House. I saw her Republican opponent, Chip Roy, who's the incumbent now, is sort of trying to tear her down already. What's his deal?
His deal is that he is in a vulnerable seat. He is a lackluster freshman who is doing his best Ted Cruz impersonation. And, ain't nothing like the real thing. Like, if you're going to be a knockoff of somebody, being a knockoff of Ted Cruz probably wouldn't be my personal brand approach to politics. But he's also nervous that there's a candidate in this race who I'm sure is going to prove to be a very strong fundraiser, a strong and active campaigner. I should say that we do have a primary process in the state, so until as soon as March of next year, assuming that other candidates do file and run, we will be allowing voters to make their decision, and we don't weigh in pre-primary, but I think it does just show the caliber of candidate who's running in Texas right now. I can think back to 2014 when I was part of the Battleground Texas team, and we were very integrated with the Wendy Davis campaign that year. And I saw firsthand that she was a fundraising powerhouse. I think we raised about $42 million or so that year just in that campaign. And there's a lot of enthusiasm among volunteers. We all know that it was a bad year for Democrats nationally. And I can dive into it perhaps in another conversation, but we do have some things that we can point to show that there were green shoots of the turnaround that we're about to see in Texas in 2016 that we really saw come to fruition in 2018. But there were hundreds of volunteers across the state, or hundreds of organizers across the state, thousands of volunteers. And having candidates who built that kind of apparatus at the congressional level, I think is a real sign of the times here in Texas.
Finally, Keir, let's kick it on up to the presidential level. New Texas poll came out the other day from CBS, but really, we haven't really taken a lay of the land in the past 10 days here of the Texas candidates, Beto and Castro. Where are they?
Well, Biden, of course, is still leading the field, though not by as much as previously. Beto's generally, I think, running a pretty close second there. Castro somewhat further behind. But as we've seen with the national polls, is a surge among two of the women, Elizabeth Warren principally and Kamala Harris as well, have both moved up pretty substantially in the polls, while Bernie Sanders has lagged behind, fallen somewhat over the last several weeks. How that shakes out in the longer term, I think, remains to be seen. We obviously have another debate coming up next week, or two debates, I should say, followed by, as I'd say, a little plug for the hometown team here, a debate in September at Houston's own Texas Southern University, a historically black university in 3rd Ward, and we're very excited to welcome the candidates here in September.
Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.